Right now, your home smells clean. Maybe there's a candle burning, a plug-in freshener doing its job in the hallway, the faint trace of laundry detergent on the dog bed you washed yesterday. The lawn was treated last week. Nothing out of the ordinary, nothing that looks like a threat. But your dog is not experiencing your home the way you are. They are lower to the ground, closer to surfaces, breathing faster, and working with a nose hundreds of times more sensitive than yours. And what science has now measured, in their blood, their urine, and their tissue, should make every dog owner stop and look at their home differently. This is not about panic, it is about information. The kind most owners never get because nobody puts it on the label. 1. Your dog is living in a different chemical world than you are. To understand why ordinary household products affect dogs more than they affect us, you need to understand the physical world your dog occupies inside your home. Pets are more vulnerable than people to exposure to toxins in and around the home. Since pets are smaller, they are closer to carpets, garage floors, lawns, and restricted spaces, which may harbor chemical and pesticide residues. But it goes deeper than proximity. According to the Whole Dog Journal, many common solvents have a higher molecular weight than air and thus settle toward the floor. Any animal that spends most of its time near or on the floor is more susceptible to these chemical exposures. This is a point of physics, not opinion. Heavier chemical compounds, including many volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, released by cleaning products, paints, flooring, and scented products, sink and concentrate at ground level. Your dog's nose operates precisely in that zone, all day, every day. Dogs have faster breathing rates and smaller lungs relative to their body size compared to humans, meaning they inhale more pollutants per pound of body weight. Add to this the grooming loop. As described by veterinary sources, dogs walk on floors cleaned with scented products and lie on bedding washed in scented detergents. They then lick their paws and fur, directly ingesting these chemicals. Unlike humans, they do not shower off contaminants at the end of the day. They do not take their shoes off at the door. They do not open windows when the air feels stale. The exposure is continuous and it accumulates. According to the Whole Dog Journal, it is not unusual for dogs who live inside to spend almost 100% of their lives indoors. Even dogs who are walked for a total of an hour every day are still indoors for 23 hours a day. The air inside your home is, functionally, the only air they breathe for their entire lives. 2. What a landmark study found in their bodies. In 2008, the Environmental Working Group, a nonprofit research organization, conducted what it described as the first study of its kind. Researchers collected blood and urine samples from 20 dogs and 37 cats at a Virginia veterinary clinic. The samples were then analyzed for 70 industrial chemicals. Dogs and cats were contaminated with 48 of 70 industrial chemicals tested, including 43 chemicals at levels higher than those typically found in humans. Read that again. Not higher than the threshold for safety. Higher than the levels typically found in adult humans, people who live in the same homes, breathe the same air, walk on the same floors. According to the EWG's published findings, for dogs, blood and urine samples were contaminated with 35 chemicals altogether, including 11 carcinogens, 31 chemicals toxic to the reproductive system, and 24 neurotoxins. The EWG also noted a detail that puts the timeline in sharper focus. Because animals age about 7 times faster than humans, their health problems develop much quicker than in people. What unfolds over decades in a human body can unfold in just a few years in a dog's. Chronic, low-level exposure that takes 30 years to manifest in a person may show consequences in a dog within 3 to 5. It is important to note the study's limitations transparently. The sample size was small 20 dogs, and the animals were all from a single veterinary clinic in Virginia. The EWG itself is an advocacy organization, not an academic institution, and its findings have not been free from criticism regarding methodology. However, the core findings that industrial chemicals are detectable in pet blood and urine at measurable levels have been consistent with the broader peer-reviewed scientific literature on environmental chemical exposure in companion animals. 3. The candles and the air fresheners. This is the one most people do not expect. Paraffin wax, candles the most common type, sold release chemical compounds when burned. According to ABC7, citing physician researcher Dr. Ariful Haq, when you burn a paraffin candle, it releases volatile organic compounds, or VOCs gases, that easily and quickly vaporize into the air at room temperature. One of these compounds is toluene, which is registered as a toxin with established exposure limits by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. According to veterinary sources cited by Preventive Vet, scented candles can also release formaldehyde, phthalates, and naphthalene. Formaldehyde is classified as a known human carcinogen by the International Agency for Research on Cancer. Phthalates are linked to hormone disruption across multiple studies in humans and animals. These are not obscure industrial compounds. They are present in products most households burn regularly, often in enclosed rooms for hours at a time. Plug-in air fresheners and aerosol sprays operate on a similar chemical basis. According to a 2011 report released by the American College of Allergy, Asthma, and Immunology, VOCs in air fresheners were linked to a 34% increase in health problems in people with asthma. The effects on dogs, who are breathing the same concentrated air at floor level where VOCs settle, have not been studied at the same scale, but veterinarians, according to multiple sources, including the Animal Keeper and Preventive Vet, are increasingly advising clients to limit their use in homes with pets. It is fair to note here, studies specifically and directly measuring the harm of candle VOCs on dogs under controlled conditions are limited in number. The available evidence connects the chemical compounds released with known health risks, but the direct causal chain from your candle to your dog's diagnosis has not been established at the level of a large, peer-reviewed clinical trial. What is established is that the compounds are present, your dog is exposed more heavily than you are, and the biological vulnerability is real. 4. What is on the lawn and where it ends up? The lawn outside your home may be one of the most significant and least discussed chemical exposure sources for your dog. In 1991, a case control study published in the Journal of the National Cancer Institute, led by researchers including Hayes, Terone, and Cantor, examined the link between the herbicide 2,4-D, a common ingredient in many lawn weed and feed products, and canine malignant lymphoma. The landmark 1991 study found that dogs from homes where the owner applied 2,4-D herbicide on the lawn were up to 2 times more likely to develop malignant lymphoma than dogs in homes without such lawn chemicals. This finding was followed 2 decades later by a larger and more detailed investigation. A study presented in the January 2012 issue of the journal Environmental Research, conducted between January 2000 and December 2006 at the Foster Hospital for Small Animals at Tufts University's Cummings School of Veterinary Medicine, concluded that exposure to professionally applied lawn pesticides was associated with a significantly 70% higher risk of canine malignant lymphoma. The study drew on data from the owners of 263 dogs with confirmed cases of canine malignant lymphoma and 470 dogs in 2 control groups. According to research from Purdue University referenced in multiple veterinary sources, treated lawns can remain as active chemical transmitters to dogs for up to 48 hours after application. More troublingly, according to those same sources, dogs living at untreated homes have also shown lawn herbicide residues in their urine, suggesting drift from treated neighboring properties or contact during walks in treated public spaces. Dogs are more vulnerable than humans to lawn care chemicals since dogs run barefoot and often roll, sniff, and dig in the grass. They have no awareness that a lawn has been recently treated. They see a surface and they engage with it fully with their paws, their noses, their mouths. It is important to acknowledge a scientific caveat here. The 1991 2.4-D study has been disputed. A follow-up analysis, reportedly funded by industry interests, questioned the association. However, as noted by researchers and legal filings cited in subsequent reviews, independent research has continued to identify a link between 2.4-D exposure and canine lymphoma, and the 2012 Tufts study, which examined professionally applied pesticides more broadly. Not only 2.4-D reached similar conclusions through a different methodological approach. 5. The dog is sentinel what their illness tells us about ourselves. There's a concept that runs through the peer-reviewed literature on this topic that researchers call the sentinel model. Like the canary in the mine shaft, dogs can serve as sentinels for human disease because they are our close companions and are subjected to many of the same environmental influences. Canine cancers have the same biology and behavior as human cancers. The goal of the 2012 Tufts study, according to its published abstract, was explicitly to use canine malignant lymphoma as a model for human non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, to identify environmental risk factors in dogs that could provide insight into human cancer risk. According to the EWG's 2008 report, dogs have much higher rates of many kinds of cancer than do people, including 35 times more skin cancer, 4 times more breast tumors, 8 times more bone cancer, and twice the incidence of leukemia, according to the Texas A&M Veterinary Medical Center. Between 20 and 25% of dogs die of cancer, making it the second leading cause of death in dogs, according to Purdue University's Department of Veterinary Pathobiology. No single household product can be held solely responsible for that figure. Cancer in dogs, as in humans, arises from a complex interaction of genetics, age, diet, and environment. What the research does tell us is that environmental chemical exposure is a measurable and documented contributing factor, and that dogs, by virtue of their biology and their behavior, carry a higher chemical burden from the places they live than we do. 6. What you can actually do. The science here does not require a complete overhaul of your home. It asks for informed adjustments. According to guidance from multiple veterinary and environmental health sources, including the EWG and Preventive Vet, some of the most evidence-supported steps are straightforward. Vacuuming regularly with a HEPA filter traps chemical-laden dust before dogs can lick it from the floor. Wet mopping hard floors instead of dry sweeping moves residues into a mop rather than back into the air. Wiping paws after walks on treated grass or public spaces reduces ingestion of herbicide residues through self-grooming. Ventilation matters. According to the EPA, as referenced in the Whole Dog Journal, indoor air in homes is, on average, 2 to 20 times more polluted than outdoor air. Opening windows, even briefly and regularly, lowers the concentration of accumulated VOCs. For candles, soy and beeswax formulations are documented to produce fewer combustion byproducts than paraffin. For air fresheners, the evidence most consistently points toward simply reducing their frequency of use in enclosed spaces where your dog spends time. For lawns, the step with the most direct research backing is the most direct one: reducing or eliminating the application of professional pesticide services, particularly those involving the herbicide 2,4-D. If you walk your dog in public spaces that may be treated, wiping paws before they lick them reduces the ingestion route that has been identified in multiple studies as a primary exposure pathway. Your home is not a toxic waste site. It is a home, and your dog loves being in it. But the science now tells us, with enough consistency to take seriously, that the ordinary chemical footprint of modern living lands on your dog differently than it lands on you. They are lower to it. They breathe it faster. They lick it off their paws. And they cannot tell you when something is wrong until the signs are already visible. The research exists. The exposures are measurable. And now you know what most owners don't, which means you can make the choices they cannot. If this changed something for you, hit like before you go. Drop a comment telling us what you're going to change first. And subscribe, because understanding your dog at this level is not just interesting. It is the thing that protects them.